Hello everyone, welcome to Chapter 2, Part 2, the last lesson before the Test 2. You should definitely be listening to the lesson recording first this time because it's going to make everything in the activity recording a whole lot more understandable. So let's go ahead and get started. In this lesson, we are going to talk about conjugating regular AR verbs. There's a lot of words there. What does any of that mean? What does conjugating mean? What's an AR verb? What the heck is any of this? Okay, all verbs in Spanish are going to end in either AR, ER, or IR in the form that you would find them in the dictionary. If you wanted to look up, if you went to the dictionary and you looked up the word run, you would find correr, which ends in ER. So all words, when you look them up in the dictionary, all verbs are going to end in AR, ER, or IR. When they still have the AR, ER, or IR on the end, they're called infinitives. Infinitives, or infinitivo in Spanish. Infinitive just means they're not conjugated. And what does not conjugated mean? That means you can't tell who is doing the action. In English, the infinitive starts with to, like to run, to study, to talk, to work. If I say to study, who's studying, or who's talking, or who's working? We don't know because there's no subject there. So let's review the subject pronouns. You'll remember that the subject pronouns for first person are yo for I, first person singular, and nosotros or nosotras for we, first person plural. And you'll remember that we would only use nosotras if it was a group of all women. If there were 2 million women and 1 man in the group, then it would be a masculine group, nosotros. Second person, you'll remember that we have an informal and a formal you. The informal you that you would use with your friends is to with an accent. The accent is important, you'll remember, because if you take it off there, to doesn't mean you, it means yours, like your book. The plural of to is vosotros, that's y'all, which remember is only used in Spain. The formal you is usted, normally abbreviated UD. That's what you would use for your, what Spanish think of as social superiors. So in other words, your boss, your teachers, your elders, stuff like that. The plural of usted is ustedes, normally abbreviated UDS, y'all again, but formal. Ustedes is what most countries use for y'all, whether it's y'all friends or y'all my bosses. Don't you love the South? I do. Third person is él for he. And remember that accent is important. You guys know very well by now that if you take the accent off of él, it doesn't mean he anymore. It means the. And ella for she. And then ellos or ellas for they, third person plural. So those are our subject pronouns. So we, instead of saying to study, we want to say I study, or we study, or you study, or he studies. Hear how it conjugates in English? I study, he studies. Those are the only 2 forms in English. You're not that lucky in Spanish. You got a lot more forms than that. So let's look at the typical, quintessential, every Spanish teacher uses it to teach this, AR verb, hablar. Hablar means to speak. Notice that I'm not pronouncing the H. H is always silent in Spanish. So hablar means to speak. The first thing we have to do whenever we want to conjugate any verb is to take off the verb ending, the AR, ER, or IR. So when I take off the AR from hablar, that leaves me with HABL. We call that the stem. The stem is what we're going to put verb endings onto in order to conjugate the verb. So let's look at that. For yo, we're going to take off the AR and put an O on the end. Yo hablo. That one most students remember pretty easily because yo ends in O and the ending is O. So yo hablo. I took the AR off and I put the O ending on there. Nosotros, the ending is amos. So I put amos on the end of the stem, H-A-B-L, and I get hablamos. Nosotros hablamos. We speak. For tú, the ending is AS. So I take the AR off and I put AS on the end. Tú hablas means you speak. Vosotros, the ending is ais. So vosotros habláis. Remember I told you I really wasn't going to teach you on or test you on the vosotros form because they only use it in Spain. But whenever I teach you to conjugate something, I'll include it just because if I didn't, I'd feel like I was cheating you. Okay, here's where you finally get lucky. Usted, él, and ella all share the same ending. Usted, él, and ella all have the ending of a for AR verbs. So, usted habla, you talk. Él habla, he talks or he speaks. Ella habla, she speaks. And ustedes and ellos also share an ending. It is an. So, ustedes hablan, y'all talk. Ellos hablan, they talk. So, what are we doing here? We're taking the AR off the verb, the end of the verb, and no matter what the verb is, for yo, we'll add O. For nosotros, we'll add amos. For tú, we'll add as. For vosotros, we'll add ais. For usted, él, and ella, we'll add a. And for ustedes and ellos, we'll add on. So, here's something that students ask me a lot. Yo hablo. Do I have to say yo? You don't, because hablo can only go with yo. There's no other person that the O ending goes with. So, yo hablo, I speak, or you could just say hablo, I speak. Now, here's another thing that drives students crazy when they're first learning Spanish. All the girl students say, well, hablo ends in an O, but I'm a girl, and I just learned that girls always turn the ending to an A for them. Like, for example, bonito, handsome, bonita, pretty. Well, that's only for adjectives. No matter what your gender is, the yo form always ends in O because this is a verb, not an adjective. So yo hablo, boy or girl. Él habla, ella habla. Ends in an A, boy or girl, doesn't matter. Let's do another example just to make sure that this is clicking. Comprar is another AR verb. It means to buy. If I take the AR off, the first thing I have to do to conjugate the verb, then I'm left with the stem, C-O-M-P-R. So how do I conjugate it? Yo compro. I took the AR off, I put an O on there. Yo compro, I buy. Nosotros compramos. I put the amos on the end for nosotros. Tú compras. I put the AS on there for tú. You buy. Vosotros compráis. Y'all buy. Usted compra. Él compra. Or ella compra. A ending for all of those. Usted compra is you buy, formal. Él compra, he buys. Ella compra, she buys. And then finally, ustedes compran or ellos compran. Ustedes compran is y'all buy, formal. And ellos compran is they buy. Okay, so every verb in the language that's regular, that ends in AR, takes these endings for the present tense. So if I gave you a verb that you had never heard of before, like dibujar, it doesn't matter that you don't know what it means. Dibujar, take the AR off. For the yo form, it would be dibujo. For the nosotros, dibujamos. For tú, dibujas. For vosotros, dibujáis. For ella, dibuja. For ellos, dibujan. Any verb, doesn't matter what it means, just stick those endings on there. Okay, now let's look at ER verbs. The vast majority of verbs in the language actually end in AR. That's why we teach that first. The next most common number of verbs end in ER. An example of one of those is beber, to drink. Just like with AR verbs, the first thing you do is you drop the infinitive ending, ER. That gives you the stem, babe. For yo, the ending is O again, bebo. Yo bebo, I drink. For nosotros, this should look familiar. For AR verbs, it was amos. For ER verbs, it's amos. You just take the A and you put an E in there. So if you've memorized one, all you have to know is which type of verb it is, ER or AR. Nosotros bebemos, we drink. Again, this should look familiar. For AR verbs, it's an AS. For ER verbs, the to form is an ES. Tú bebes, you drink. Informal, my friends drink. Vosotros bebes, again, an E instead of an A. Y'all drink. Usted bebe, él bebe, ella bebe. Usted bebe, you drink, formal. Él bebe, he drinks. Ella bebe, she drinks. Instead of it ending in an A, this is an ER verb, so it ends in an E. And lastly, ustedes beben and ellos beben. This is an ER verb, so instead of it ending in AN, it ends in EN. Ustedes beben, y'all drink. Ellos beben, they drink. Okay, the next group of verbs is IR verbs. The least number of verbs in the language end in IR. The most commonly used one to practice conjugation in the present tense is vivir. Vivir means to live. Same as with AR verbs, same as with ER verbs. The first thing you do when you want to conjugate an IR verb is you take the IR off and you get left with the stem, viv. Now, for the yo form, the ending is O, just like it was for AR and ER verbs. Yo vivo, I live. So this is starting to not look so hard, right? Now, if the nosotros form for AR verbs was amos and the nosotros form for ER verbs was amos, what do you think the nosotros ending for IR verbs is going to be? You guessed it, emos. Nosotros vivimos. We live. You think you're pretty smart now, don't you? I bet you think that you're going to guess what the to form is going to be. Wrong. But it's not completely unexpected. For the IR verbs, the to form takes the same ending as ER verbs, tu vives. And then, just to make your life miserable, nosotros goes back to having an I in the stem, vivis, but I'm not going to test you on that. El, ella, and usted is like ER verbs, vive. Usted vive, you live. Él vive, he lives. Ella vive, she lives. And the third person plural, ustedes viven, y'all live, and ellos viven, they live. So the yo form is the same for AR, ER, and IR verbs. It's always an O. The nosotros form, AR verbs, amos. ER verbs, amos. IR verbs, emos. The to form for AR verbs, it's os. For ER and IR verbs, ace. The usted, el, and ella form for AR verbs, ah. For ER and IR verbs, e. Ustedes and ellos for AR verbs, on. For ER and IR verbs, en. So these are the verb endings that you have to conjugate, you have to memorize in order to be able to conjugate verbs. To make conjugation means to make the verb and the subject agree. So just like we wouldn't say, I studies in English, we wouldn't say yo estudias. It would have to be yo estudio. Okay, now there are a few more little details that I want you to learn about verbs in this chapter. But first, let's go ahead and look at the participation points. For conjugation practice, write a sentence using the verb from the picture and the supplied subject pronoun. So for the first one, she's opening the door. So what you would do is you would look up the word for to open if you haven't already memorized it, and which don't worry if you haven't. And you would conjugate the word for to open to agree with yo. Here's a hint. The test is going to be exactly like this. So if you have any questions about these participation points, email me. Okay, now, a few more things that I need for you to know about verbs from this chapter. Gustar is an AR verb. We commonly translate it to mean to like, but technically it means to be pleasing to. It's not like all other verbs. We don't say gusto, gustamos, gustas, because it technically means to be pleasing. So if I say gusto, what you're saying is I am pleasing. Now, it's possible that you might mean that, but it's unlikely. If you say gustamos, what you're really saying is we are pleasing. Again, it might be possible that you intend to say that we are pleasing people, but that's not likely. Usually, one thing is pleasing or more than one thing is pleasing. So it's pleasing to me, or those things over there are pleasing to me. So normally, we're only going to conjugate gustar as gusta, when you only like one thing, or gustan when you like more than one thing. And then to say it's pleasing to me, you use me. Me gusta literally means something is pleasing to me. Nos gusta literally means something is pleasing to us. Te gusta means something is pleasing to you. Le gusta means something is pleasing to him or to her. And les gusta means something is pleasing to them or to y'all. So for my example over there, me gusta leer. That one activity, me gusta leer, reading is pleasing to me. Literally what I'm saying is reading is pleasing to me. In good common English, we would translate that, I like to read. Okay, now let's look at gustan. Me gustan literally means many things, a group of things are pleasing to me. Nos gustan, a group of things are pleasing to us. Te gustan, a group of things are pleasing to you, informal. Le gustan, a group of things are pleasing to him or to her or to you, formal. and les gustan, a group of things, are pleasing to them or are pleasing to y'all. So, my example over there, me gustan libros. Libros, plural books, more than one book. Literally, books are pleasing to me. But in good English, I like books. Okay, why is this important to you? Because you'll remember one of your preguntas personales is ¿Qué te gusta hacer? What do you like to do? And you're going to answer things like me gusta leer, I like to read. Me gusta viajar, I like to travel. Let's see, what's another one? Me gusta comprar, I like to buy things. Stuff like that. Okay? Now, one other detail about verbs in this chapter is to have to do something. Remember, one of your preguntas personales was ¿Qué tienes que hacer? What do you have to do? Now, that implies that we can conjugate the verb tener, to have. To have, tener means to have as in possessing something. And it also means to have to, as in an obligation to do something. Just like any other verb, the first thing we have to do to conjugate it is to drop the ER. That leaves us with a stem of ten. Well, I put sort of in parentheses because tener is actually an irregular verb. Just like ser was irregular, remember it was soy, somos, eres, es, and son. You would expect if it was a regular ER verb, it would be so, samos, seis, say, and sen with those regular ER verb endings. But it's not. It's totally irregular, right? Soy, somos, eres, es, and son. Well, tener is irregular too. It's just not as radically irregular as ser is. So let's look at how tener gets conjugated. The yo form of tener is tengo. It still uses the o ending that you expect for the yo form of everything. The question is, where'd that G come from? The thin blue sky. Don't worry about it. Yo tengo. Just memorize it. Yo tengo, I have. Nosotros tenemos. Nice and regular. We add that amos onto the stem. Ten. Okay, tú tienes. The ending is regular. It's the es ending that you expect for the to form, but notice that there's an I in the stem. That's a preview of coming attractions. The E changing to IE is something called stem-changing verbs. Tener is a stem-changing verb. So the E has changed to an IE in the stem. Why? Just because. Just memorize it. Tú tienes, you have. Vosotros tenéis. Usted tiene, él tiene, and ella tiene. You have, he has, and she has. And ustedes tienen, and ellos tienen. Y'all have, and they have. Again, those are the endings that you expect. It's just that stem has done that stem changing thing. So that's how you conjugate tener. So how are we going to use it in this chapter? Just in a limited way. Tener que plus the infinitive of a verb means to have to do something. So tengo que estudiar means I have to study. Tengo que, let's see, what's another one of your verbs? Tengo que leer mis libros. I have to read my books. Tengo que escribir mi tarea. I have to write my homework. So if you need to say I have to do something, tengo que plus an infinitive, an unconjugated verb.